I never meant to snoop. 23 years of marriage had taught me to respect James's privacy. But when I found the letter while cleaning our bedroom, something compelled me to read it. The cream-colored envelope sat unsealed on his nightstand, my name written across the front in his familiar handwriting. At first, I thought it was a birthday card. My 49th was just 2 weeks away, but the weight of the pages inside suggested something more substantial. I slid the folded pages out, my fingers trembling slightly. The date at the top was yesterday's. My dearest Caroline, by the time you read this, I may already have left. I've been carrying these words in my heart for months now, trying to find the right moment, the right way to tell you. But there's never a right way to say goodbye to the person who's been your whole world for more than half your life. My heart plummeted to my stomach. I sat heavily on our bed, the one we'd picked out together at that furniture store in Portland when we first moved to Maine, the one where our children had crawled in during thunderstorms, where we'd whispered secrets and made love and fought and reconciled. I remember the day we met like it was yesterday. You in that blue dress at Martha's gallery opening, laughing with your head thrown back, completely uninhibited. I knew then that you were someone extraordinary. Someone who could make me better than I was. And you did, Caroline. You made me better in every way, but I haven't been honest with you, not for a long time. I stopped reading, my vision blurring. James was leaving me? After all these years? My mind raced through possibilities. Another woman, a midlife crisis, something I'd done wrong. We'd had our rough patches, of course, but things had been good lately, stable. At least I thought they had. Our daughter Emma was finishing her senior year at Boston University. Our son Michael had just been promoted at his firm in Chicago. James's accounting practice was thriving. I'd finally gone back to teaching art at the community college after taking years off to raise the kids. Our life was comfortable, predictable. Maybe that was the problem. I forced myself to continue reading. I've been offered a position at Harrington and Associates in Seattle. It's the kind of opportunity I never thought would come at this stage in my career. A complete fresh start across the country. Seattle? That was over 3,000 miles away. I felt sick. I've thought about asking you to come with me, to start over together somewhere new. But I know how much your life here means to you, your students, your friends, your sister just an hour away. I couldn't ask you to leave all that behind. And if I'm being completely honest, maybe this is my chance to find out who I am outside of us. I'll always love you, Caroline, but sometimes love isn't enough to keep two people on the same path forever. James. I sat there, letter in hand, for what felt like hours. Outside, the September sun filtered through the maple tree we'd planted when we first moved in, casting dappled shadows across our bedroom floor. In the distance, I could hear the lobster boats returning to harbor, their motors a familiar backdrop to our coastal life. How could he do this? Write me a letter instead of talking to me face to face? Plan his escape while sleeping beside me each night? I thought of all the times in recent months when he'd seemed distracted, distant. I'd attributed it to work stress, to the natural ebbs and flows of a long marriage. I heard the garage door opening downstairs. James, home early from work. In a panic, I folded the letter, slipped it back into its envelope, and without thinking, hurried to his office across the hall. I opened his briefcase, the worn leather one I'd given him for our 15th anniversary, and tucked the letter inside, between manila folders filled with client information. I wasn't ready to confront him. Not yet. Not until I'd had time to process this, to figure out what I wanted to say, what I wanted to do. That evening, as we moved around each other in the kitchen preparing dinner, I studied him surreptitiously. Did he look guilty? Relieved to have written the letter, even if he hadn't given it to me yet. He seemed normal. A little quiet, perhaps, but nothing unusual. Emma called today, I said, chopping carrots with more force than necessary. She and David are definitely coming for Thanksgiving. They're driving up Wednesday morning. That's great, James said, looking up from the chicken he was seasoning. His smile seemed genuine. It'll be good to have everyone home. Did she mention how her thesis is coming along? How could he act so normal? Plan for Thanksgiving when he wouldn't even be here? She said it's on track, I replied, turning away so he wouldn't see the tears threatening to spill. Michael confirmed too. 4 days. All of us together. James came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. A gesture so familiar it hurt. "Just like old times," he murmured. I wanted to scream, to turn around and demand answers. Instead, I leaned back against him, memorizing the feeling of his body against mine, wondering how many more times I would get to experience it. "I invited your parents for Sunday dinner," I said casually, though my heart was racing. "And my sister and Tom. I thought it would be nice to have everyone together before the weather turns, a family dinner. The perfect opportunity to confront him, to make him explain himself to everyone he was planning to abandon." James tensed slightly, then relaxed. "Sounds nice," he said, kissing my cheek before returning to the stove. For the next 3 days, I moved through life like a sleepwalker. I taught my classes, smiled at colleagues, discussed glazing techniques and composition with students, all while the letter burned in my mind. Every word seared into my consciousness. I considered confronting James privately, giving him the chance to explain. But something held me back. Perhaps it was pride, or fear, or a deep-seated desire to make him face everyone at once, to make it real in a way that a private conversation might not. By Sunday morning, I had formulated my plan. I would wait until dinner was finished, until everyone was relaxed with coffee and the pear tart I'd spent the morning baking. Then, I would retrieve the letter from his briefcase and read it aloud. Let him explain himself to our children, to his parents, to my sister who had warned me years ago that James was too restless for small-town life. The day passed in a blur of preparation, vacuuming, dusting, setting the table with our good china. James puttered in the garden, seemingly oblivious to my inner turmoil. When he came in with dirt-smudged hands and offered to help, I sent him to pick up wine instead, needing space to breathe, to think. At 4 o'clock, I slipped into his office and opened his briefcase to ensure the letter was still there. It was, tucked exactly where I'd left it. I touched the envelope briefly, then closed the briefcase with a decisive click. By 6, our house was filled with voices, laughter, the chaos of family. Emma and David had surprised us by driving up a day early. Michael had flown in from Chicago and was regaling James's parents with stories of his latest project. My sister Lisa arrived with her husband Tom and a bottle of expensive bourbon for James. I moved through it all with a strange detachment, smiling, hugging, accepting compliments on the pot roast and roasted vegetables. All while watching the clock, waiting for the moment when dinner would end and my real plan would begin. The dinner plates had been cleared, replaced with dessert plates holding slices of pear tart. James was pouring coffee, moving around the table with the carafe, looking relaxed and happy in a way that made my anger flare anew. He was laughing at something Michael had said, his head thrown back in that uninhibited way that had first drawn me to him at a gallery opening 25 years ago. "I have something I'd like to share," I said suddenly, my voice cutting through the chatter. All eyes turned to me. "Mom?" Emma looked concerned. She had always been the perceptive one, quick to pick up on undercurrents of emotion. "I'll be right back," I said, pushing back from the table. In James's office, I opened his briefcase with shaking hands and retrieved the envelope. For a moment, I hesitated. Was I really going to do this? Expose our private business to everyone we loved? But then, I remembered the coldness of his words. Sometimes love isn't enough to keep two people on the same path forever. And my resolve hardened. When I returned to the dining room, the conversation had resumed, though at a more subdued level. James was the first to notice me standing in the doorway, letter in hand. His eyes fixed on the envelope, and I saw something flash across his face. Not guilt, as I expected, but something closer to confusion. "Caroline?" he said, setting down his coffee cup. I moved to the head of the table, suddenly aware of the weight of what I was about to do. Our children, his parents, my sister, all watching me with expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. "I found this letter a few days ago," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "James wrote it to me, but he hasn't had the courage to give it to me yet. So I thought I'd save him the trouble and share it with all of you." "Mom, what are you doing?" Michael asked, glancing between James and me. James had gone completely still, his face pale. "Caroline, I don't understand." "Don't you?" I asked bitterly. opening the envelope. Let me refresh your memory. I pulled out the letter and began to read, my voice clear and controlled despite the trembling of my hands. My dearest Caroline, by the time you read this, I may already have left. I looked up to see shock rippling around the table. Emma had her hand pressed to her mouth. Michael was staring at his father with wide, disbelieving eyes. I've been carrying these words in my heart for months now, trying to find the right moment, the right way to tell you, but there's never a right way to say goodbye to the person who's been your whole world for more than half your life. Dad? Emma's voice was small, hurt. James pushed back from the table and stood. Caroline, please stop. That's not... Not what? I demanded, my control slipping. Not what you meant to say when you wrote that you're moving to Seattle? That you want to find out who you are outside of us? I continued reading, my voice rising as I got to the part about his job offer, about how he couldn't ask me to leave everything behind. You didn't even give me the choice, I cried, the letter crumpling in my grip. You just decided for both of us. The room had gone deadly silent. James's mother was crying quietly. My sister had her arm around Emma, who looked stricken. Michael sat rigid in his chair, jaw clenched in the way it had been when he was a little boy trying not to cry. Caroline, James said, moving toward me with his hands outstretched. Please let me explain. What is there to explain? I demanded, backing away. It's all here in black and white. You're leaving us, leaving me, for a job across the country. Were you even going to say goodbye to the kids in person? Or were you planning to write them letters too? I'm not leaving, James said, his voice tight with emotion. That letter, it's not what you think. Don't lie to me, I shouted, waving the crumpled pages. I've read every word. Mom, Dad, Michael intervened, standing up. Maybe the rest of us should give you some privacy. No, I said firmly. No more privacy. No more secrets. James has been planning his escape for months. Everyone deserves to know. It's not an escape plan, James said, running his hands through his silver-streaked hair in frustration. Caroline, that letter is part of a creative writing class I've been taking. I froze. What? A creative writing class? He repeated. At the community college, Thursday nights. I've been going for the past 2 months. I stared at him, uncomprehending. You don't take a writing class. I do, he insisted. Our assignment was to write a difficult letter, something we found hard to express. I chose to write a fictional letter about leaving, about starting over because he hesitated, glancing around at our family before continuing. Because sometimes I do wonder what it would be like to do something completely different at this stage in my life. You want to leave, I said, but with less certainty now. No, he said firmly. I don't want to leave, but I do want more than just the status quo. More than just going to the same office, seeing the same clients, coming home to the same routine day after day. His parents exchanged glances. My sister was watching me with a mix of sympathy and something else. Perhaps relief that this wasn't the disaster it had first appeared to be. Why didn't you tell me about the class? I asked, my anger giving way to confusion. James sighed. Because it was something just for me. Something I was doing to challenge myself, to stretch in a new direction. And honestly, I was a little embarrassed. An accountant trying to write creative fiction? It seemed, I don't know, foolish somehow. So, there's no job in Seattle? Michael asked. No job in Seattle, James confirmed. I've never even been to Seattle. And you're not leaving, Mom? Emma's voice was small but hopeful. I'm not leaving your mother, James said, looking directly at me. Though after this, she might be considering leaving me. A nervous laugh rippled around the table, releasing some of the tension. I looked down at the crumpled letter in my hands, then back at my husband. But it seemed so real, so specific. That was the point of the exercise, he explained gently, to make it believable, to tap into real emotions even in a fictional scenario. He hesitated. The part about meeting you in that blue dress at the gallery opening, that was real. The part about you making me better, that's real too. I felt tears welling up, but for entirely different reasons now. Relief mingled with embarrassment, and the dawning realization of what I'd just done. Oh God, I whispered, looking around at our family, I'm so sorry, everyone. I thought... It's okay, Mom, Michael said, though he still looked shaken. You thought Dad was leaving. Anyone would be upset. James's father cleared his throat. Maybe we should give you two some time alone. No, James said unexpectedly. No, I think this is good. Cards on the table. He turned to face me. Caroline, I'm not leaving you or our family, but I have been feeling restless. Wondering if this is all there is to the second half of life. Why didn't you say something? I asked. Because I didn't want to seem ungrateful, he admitted. We have a good life, a beautiful home, wonderful children, careers we've worked hard for. Who am I to want more, to want different? Emma reached across the table and took his hand. Dad, it's okay to want more. We all do sometimes. What do you want? I asked quietly. If not Seattle, if not leaving, then what? James looked thoughtful. I don't know exactly. To travel more, maybe. To try new things. To take risks, creative ones, like the writing class. He smiled slightly. To see you take risks too. You're an incredible artist, Caroline. You could be doing so much more with your talent than teaching introductory classes. My sister nodded vigorously at this. She'd been telling me the same thing for years. So, where does that leave us? I asked, suddenly aware that everyone was watching this intensely personal conversation unfold. James looked around the table, then back at me. Maybe with a fresh start, not in Seattle, but right here. A new chapter, not a new book entirely. The aftermath of what our children now jokingly referred to as the letter incident was both more difficult and more transformative than I could have imagined. After our guests had gone, with hugs that lingered a bit longer than usual and promises to call soon, James and I sat at our kitchen table until nearly dawn, talking more honestly than we had in years. I keep thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't found the letter, I admitted, cradling a mug of tea that had long since gone cold. If you'd turned it in to your class and I never knew about these feelings you've been having. James reached across the table to take my hand. His wedding band caught the light from the fixture above us. The same fixture we'd installed when we first bought the house, promising to update it someday, but never quite getting around to it. I think that's why I left it out, he said quietly. Maybe part of me wanted you to find it. Wanted to have this conversation without having to be brave enough to start it. You could have just talked to me, I said, but without the anger that had fueled me earlier. After 23 years, James, we should be able to talk about anything, should be. He agreed with a sad smile. But the longer you're with someone, the harder it gets to rock the boat. You build this life together, this structure, and suggesting changes starts to feel like saying it's not good enough, that the other person isn't enough. I thought about that, about how comfortable we'd become in our routines, in our roles. How long had it been since either of us had surprised the other, since we'd taken a risk together? You know, I said slowly, I've been thinking about applying for the artist residency program in Provence, the one Lisa told me about last year. James looked surprised. You never mentioned it. Because it seemed selfish, I admitted. 3 months away, focusing just on my art? What kind of wife leaves for that long? The kind married to someone who wants her to pursue her passions, James said firmly. You should apply, Caroline. I mean it. Maybe I will, I said, feeling a flutter of excitement at the possibility. And what about you? What would make you feel less restless? He thought for a moment. I'd like to take a sabbatical, maybe next summer, when the firm is slower. Not to move to Seattle, he added with a small smile, but to travel. To see some of the places we've always talked about but never prioritized. Together? I asked, suddenly vulnerable. Together, he confirmed, squeezing my hand. Always together, Caroline. That was never the question. 2 days later, Emma and Michael came over for dinner. Just the 4 of us this time. I'd worried they might look at their father differently now, might harbor some lingering doubt about his commitment to our family. But as I watched them together, James teaching David how to properly slice a ribeye, Emma laughing at some inside joke with her father, I realized that our children were adults now, capable of understanding that marriage was complex, that people could feel conflicted without acting destructively on those feelings. "So," Michael said as we lingered over dessert, "are you two okay? Really okay?" James and I exchanged glances. "We're working on it," I said honestly. "Your father and I have some plans to shake things up a bit." "Mom applied for that artist thing in France," Emma said, clearly already in the loop. "Dad texted me yesterday, and I'm looking into taking a few months off next year." James added, "Your mother and I thought we might rent an RV, drive cross-country. See the national parks, visit you in Chicago, maybe even make it to Seattle after all." He winked at me. "Wow," Michael said, looking impressed. "That's not very you, Dad." "Maybe it's time for me to be a slightly different me," James replied. "At least in some ways." After they left, James and I stood side by side at the sink, falling into our usual rhythm of washing and drying. The normalcy of it was comforting, but there was a new undercurrent of awareness, of appreciation for even this mundane moment together. "I enrolled in a photography workshop," James said casually, handing me a dripping plate. "Weekend after next, up in Acadia." I raised my eyebrows. "Photography? That's new." He shrugged, looking slightly self-conscious. "I've always liked taking pictures. Thought it might be fun to learn how to do it properly." "It sounds perfect," I said, meaning it. "And you know what? I'm keeping up with the painting class, the one where we're doing large-scale abstracts. I was going to drop it because it felt too, indulgent, but I'm enjoying it." James smiled. "Good. You should do more of what you enjoy." Later that night, as we lay in bed with the windows open to the cool October air, I thought about the letter that had nearly shattered our world. How close I'd come to losing everything by assuming the worst instead of simply asking. "James?" I whispered, unsure if he was still awake. His voice was drowsy but present. "I'm sorry I didn't trust you enough to ask about the letter first, that I jumped to conclusions." He rolled over to face me, his expression serious in the dim light. "And I'm sorry I didn't trust you enough to tell you how I was feeling, that I had to write it in a fictional letter for a class instead of saying it directly to my wife. We're quite a pair, aren't we?" I said with a small laugh. "The best pair I know," he murmured, pulling me closer. 6 months later, I stood in a sunlit studio in Arles, surrounded by canvases larger and more vibrant than any I'd created before. The artist residency had transformed not only my work, but something essential in me, a willingness to take up space, to make bold strokes, to risk failure for the chance at something extraordinary. James had flown over twice during my 3-month stay. During his second visit, we'd rented a car and driven through the countryside, staying in small villages, eating at local restaurants, making love in rooms with views of lavender fields and ancient stone churches. It felt like a second honeymoon, but better somehow, informed by our history together, but not weighed down by it. "I'm thinking of showing these when I get back," I said, gesturing to the canvases as we packed up the studio on my final day. "Lisa knows someone with a gallery in Portland." "You absolutely should," James said, carefully wrapping a painting of the view from our bedroom window, a view I'd looked at for 20 years but somehow seen anew from thousands of miles away. "These are incredible, Caroline. And what about you?" I asked. "Are you still planning to take that sabbatical?" He nodded, a boyish excitement in his eyes that reminded me of the young man I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. "Everything's arranged. Michael's even talking about joining us for the stretch through the Southwest. And Emma and David want to meet up in Yellowstone." As we locked the studio door for the last time, I felt a moment of nostalgia for this brief, beautiful chapter. But more than that, I felt anticipation for the ones still to come, for the road trip across America with my husband of nearly 24 years, for the gallery show that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure, for the photography book James had shyly mentioned he was considering putting together. That evening, our last in France, we sat at a small cafe overlooking the Rhône. The setting sun gilded the ancient buildings, the river, James's face as he studied the menu. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked suddenly. "Staying in the same town, the same career all these years?" He considered the question seriously, as he did all questions. "No," he said finally. "But I might have, Eventually, if we hadn't found a way to create new experiences within the life we've built, if we just kept going through the motions without really seeing each other. I thought about the letter that had started it all, the fictional goodbye that had ultimately led us not to an ending, but to a new beginning. "I'm glad I found it," I said. "Your letter." Even though it nearly gave me a heart attack, James laughed, reaching across the table for my hand. "I'm glad you read it at the family dinner," he countered, "though I could have done without your sister saying, 'I told you so,' about the creative writing class. She's been insufferable ever since." "Lisa's always insufferable," I said fondly. "It's her most consistent quality." As night fell over Arles, as lights came on along the riverbank, and stars appeared in the clear spring sky, I felt a profound gratitude for second chances, for misunderstandings that lead to deeper understanding, for the courage to say, "I'm restless," and the grace to hear it not as rejection, but as an invitation. Not to Seattle, but to a journey we could take together, one that had already begun.